Ander, Discord, your ass. Pitch meeting. Now!
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to, of course, the Wasteland. Now, of course, obviously you're seeing footage in the background, you're seeing our two avatars. Don't question it. By this point in time, you should be used to it. But either way, today I'm joined by my friend AnderFell, who, of course, as many of you know, helps me out with a few things here and there, everywhere. And I am totally not blackmailing his ass to being on this project, because when I told him what the project was about, or at least what this pitch was about, I didn't have to blackmail him to get him on here. So, AnderFell, welcome to, honestly, your second pitch meeting, but your first co-op pitch meeting video.
Yes, it is. And yes, he is totally not blackmailing me. I totally do not have a gun pointed at the back of my head with a script in front of me that I have to read. Ha 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 ha. Please send help.
Anyway, but no, today's, ironically enough, ladies and gentlemen, and yes, the footage behind us is relevant, mind you. Today, ladies and gentlemen, it is, of course, a pitch meeting for Code Geass. Ironically enough, I have talked about Code Geass in the past, and Ander here has actually talked about Fallout in the past, but we have never actually combined the two. And so, with, of course, a suggestion from you, my lovely audience, we decided to do that and kind of ask the question, what would happen if Code Geass and Fallout met? And if you want us to actually make this thing into reality, links down below to the PayPal and Cash App. Money is, of course, welcomed. But in all seriousness, though, today, ladies and gentlemen, we talk about, of course, the pitch for Code Geass, The War of Tomorrow.
War for tomorrow.
I know what I said. Imagine, if you will, Big Mountain, the Mojave Wasteland.
Bastion of science and technology, where some of the greatest minds of the pre-war and post-war are still churning out scientific marvels and monstrosities. Looking at you, Night Stalkers and Cazadors. You haunt my dreams.
And then, of course, we have the Courier. The Courier who's currently in the sink. Just looking at everything, marveling at everything, looking at the one of many player homes that you can have in the Mojave Wasteland, and by God Almighty, if we really think about it, we have, of course, fucking Good Springs, we got fucking Novak, we have Lucky 38, but then, of course, we have the Imp, then, of course, we got the Sink with all of its talking things. I'm getting off topic. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, you have a lot of player homes, but none are not as technologically advanced or absolutely curiosity-inducing as the Sink. With its
yes, definitely.
Oh yes, with its
many personalities, including an evil toaster that wants to take over the world.
Well, I was going to say
why? Who knows?
I was going to say untested technology, but yes, that also. Many personalities also. But, ladies and gentlemen, why I bring up the untested technology is because, well, the Courier in our story idea happens to see a device that he has no idea what does, has no idea what function it has, but yet it is large, it is blinking, it is bright, it is beautiful, and has a very large red button. Now,
And for
any
those of you seeing where this is going, yes, the courier pushed the button.
Now, of course, like Anders says, he does push the button, but let's be honest, anyone in that situation would push the button. I don't care how many of you say, I would never push that button. We all know we would push the button. I mean, for God's
Because the
sakes.
button is love. The button is life.
Well, I was going to bring up the fact that in Lonesome Road, there's a big red button that you press to launch a missile, and it's like you're fighting that instinct not to press the button, but you want to press the button.
I mean, we have to press the button in order to move on, so that's actually a whole other point in and of itself.
Well, I was talking about the ending, but okay. Anyway, so yes, ladies and gentlemen, basically the button does something that will colloquially be known as the pulse. Switching gears over to the Code Geass universe, things are normal. Well, about as normal as can be.
Yeah, as normal as can be in a world where the American Revolution failed and a literal techno-fascist government is literally trying to conquer the world in order to, and spoiler alerts, kill God. Oh yeah, like that won't have ramifications down the road. Oh, sure it won't. But hey, at least Chucky will get his wish, a world without lies. If you can't tell, I'm really salty about what Code Geass is.
And at this very moment, and many of you will be saying, well, what point in the story are you putting this at? Will you be putting it at before the Shinjuku Massacre? Before the invasion of Japan? After the invasion of Japan? Or during the invasion of Japan? During the Shinjuku Massacre? After the Shinjuku Massacre? The formation of the Black Knights? The pre-invasion of the JLF with Cornelia taking control? Or during the invasion of the JLF with Cornelia in control? If you think that one, then that is correct. That is where we're setting this son of a bitch at.
Yep, because after some discussion and back and forth, we decided that before, well, it would still give Lelouch a little bit of a hard time. And after, well, it's too close to the SAZ.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided, hey, why not during the Battle of Narita?
Mm-hmm.
And to any of our Japanese viewers who's watching this, I am sorry if I destroy pronunciation of names.
Now, don't get us wrong. We brought up a lot of good points with the many different areas I've brought up. Even if we had said it before the invasion of Japan, even if we said it during the invasion of Japan, there are a lot of elements that are at play that could work. And let's be honest here, to any author out there who would be looking at this idea and listening to this idea and realizing, hey, what would happen if during the invasion of Japan, Britannia, something happened to Britannia and they had to pull back their forces? It's like, there are a lot of cool elements at play with that. And don't get us wrong, there is merit. There really is.
Yes, there really is. And if you want to do that, hey, go crazy. Go ham.
Yeah, that's why I create these pitch videos. It's so people can take these ideas and roll with them. Hell, Ander has made a pitch for Attack on Titan and Fallout, for God's sakes.
Yes, I did.
Which will
Anyone
be
who
linked
remembers
at
that
the end of the video. It'll be linked at the end of the video, for those who are curious. Now, we bring up this fact because, well, something happens in mainland Britannia, and you're seeing a map on screen. This is important. You see, this is Britannia as it is, before the Pulse. This is Britannia after the Pulse.
Yeah, Britannia was a big old pile of before the Pulse. After the Pulse, it's still a big old pile of but it's gotten a little bit more worse for the average person. All the people that really caused it is, well, depending on how you look at it, fortunately or unfortunately, they're no longer around. Well, most of them, anyway.
Yeah, because now a good chunk of the, continent, number one, is replaced with, a lot new landmass and new things outside of the said landmass. And then, of course, there is the fact of a massive energy wave, not too dissimilar to an EMP after, a nuke goes off in high altitudes, like we saw in, of course, High School of the Dead. Essentially knocks out Socrodite, the MacGuffin crystal, which, don't get me wrong, by itself especially if you look at the props and everything cosplayers have made, Sakradite crystals, is actually legitimately very pretty. Like, it's legitimately a very pretty crystal.
Oh, it's a very pretty crystal.
However, its properties are very, very fucking volatile. Moving on. So basically, that crystal is now nothing more than a crystal. It's no longer a fuel source. It's just a very pretty rock. Okay, that's insulting.
A
It's
very
a very
decorative
pretty,
rock.
It's a very pretty gemstone, I guess I should say, and that's all it is now. However, of course, we'll get into the effects of it afterwards. But basically, the world is now curious because a good majority of Canada, or what is Canada in the Code Geass universe, just lost power. A good chunk of Mexico just lost power, as well as a good chunk of the Caribbean just lost power. What I'm trying to say here, folks, is that a massive EMP wave just hit the continental U.S. area. Or at least, would it be EMP or would it be anti-gem pulse?
It would have the same properties as the EMP, so EMP.
Okay, we'll stick with EMP. However, if you want to correct us in the comment section or come up with creative names for the pulse,
Please do.
Exactly, let us know in the comment section. So, moving on to, of course, confusion! Because, let's be honest here, folks, I don't care who you are, I don't care where you're at, if something massive happens to a very large nationalistic organization, or really any organization whatsoever that basically lost communication with any sort of mainland, HQ, what have you, well, confusion ensues.
The I am confusion meme.
Yes, very much so. And this comes in effect almost immediately. Or at least, I'd say within about 30 minutes or so, give or take, considering that, well, if you lose communication with the mainland within 30 minutes or less...
You get a free pizza!
Still confused how Pizza Hut's still a goddamn thing in this. You know what? We're not going down that rabbit hole, because people have made conspiracy theories.
Hey, I'm just happy it's still a thing. I want my meat lovers, dang it.
Oh, my dear God. Anyway, so, I will let Ander take over for this, for a good portion of this video, while giving a little bit, since he is more inclined to the Code Geass lore than I am. So, Ander, please take over for this part.
Alright, so, as we all know, if anyone has watched the show, if not, I really would recommend it. Really good show. If you're one that is easily offended by copious amounts of racism, still watch it, because they still get their comeuppance.
Unless, of course, you're a sensitive little snowflake who can't handle any sort of anything, then fuck off.
And what else said in a little bit nicer terms for me. But anyway, now our story begins, of course, with the Battle of Narita. Now, for those who do not know, that is where Princess Cornelia, her forces, tracked the remnants of the Japanese Liberation Front to their headquarters in a pre-invasion Japan military bunker. Now, what's so special about this is that supposedly this was going to be the JLF's, that's Japanese Liberation Front's, last stand. Now, Zero, or Lelouch, as from Code Geass, Lelouch of the Rebellion, him and his forces, the Black Knights, are at the top. Now, what happens is still the same. He still causes the landslide. It still buries the JLF. It still causes Cornelia to lose 80% of her forces. Or we may choose to, make it 60%, or maybe even 50% of her forces. Give her still at least a little bit of numerical advantage. Now, that's where it all stays the same. Now, what changes is when she, gets back to the Viceroyal Palace in Shinjuku, where, of course, she's automatically going to her communications hub to demand more reinforcements from the homeland, when, of course, she walks in to yell to get the homeland on the front when she literally sees every communications officer and high-ranking general literally scurrying back and forth, shouting, trying to get someone from the homeland. Around the same time Zero's landslide happened, all communication with the homeland, including most of Canada and Mexico, were lost. No one could find anyone. No one could talk to anyone in the homeland. Schneisel has even called Cornelia in Japan to see what in the world's going on. Why can't he get in contact with anyone in Pendragon? Why can't he get in contact with their father, the Emperor? Of course, they've tried everything. Satellites aren't working. Their radios aren't picking up anything. At least, not yet. Because they're not looking for specific frequencies. So eventually they're just like, you know what? Okay, let's break out the old ham radios. Let's just see if we can get a radio enthusiast in the homeland. That is when they hear it.
Listening to Galaxy News Radio, and I'm your host, Three Dog, Lord and Master of all I survey.
It's Red Eye here, running Raider Radio. You love it, and you know it.
The Enclave is you, America. The Enclave is your sister, your aunt, your friend, your neighbor. And well, yes, the Enclave is me as well.
They hear a radio station.
You have to understand, folks, that while I'm getting better at editing, I'm still not as good as it is. So yes, they do hear Mr. New Vegas. They hear Radio Freedom. They hear the Enclave. And of course they hear Three Dog. As well as every other radio station out in the wasteland. Or at least out in the ether. That is, of course, your basic ham radio. Now you're probably asking, how is that possible? A little bit of quick tidbit for the Fallout universe for those who are yet uninitiated or don't really understand the show, or have just now started playing the games. The reason, and this comes down to basic radiological science, or at least my understanding of it, when radiation is thick in the atmosphere, or at least in a localized area, that blocks radio signals. To a degree, mind you. It kind of depends on the radiation level, and it would take a scientist or someone who understands this stuff to kind of explain in great detail. But basically, a lot of radiation means distance of radio communication. No radiation.
Which means all the communication possible. Which, comes to think of it, would kind of explain why no one knows outside the continental U.S. if anyone's still alive. All that radiation from literally all those bombs dropping basically is like, oh, you want to reach outside the U.S.? Nope. Sorry, fellas. No can do.
Take a boat and go see for yourself.
Exactly.
Or
who knows? Maybe you can go to India and trade for some spices. I hear they're sending out boats looking for people.
But yes, basically, the entire world is hearing these radio signals, which confuses the ever-loving hell out of certain people, including Britannia, because, America? You mean Washington's rebellions? The EU? Absolutely confused to high heaven.
And the Chinese Federation? Oh, they're just plotting and scheming how they can turn this situation on for themselves. Except for one Chinese general, Jinqi. He's like,
which we will get
I wonder
to.
If these newcomers can help my empress.
Which we will get to later on, of course, in the the pitching. But for the Black Knights, especially for Zero, it is absolute curiosity, confusion, and even for one immortal witch who has way too much porn for her own good, just confusion.
Hey, she's got to get her kick somewhere, man. I mean, after 700 years, you've seen it all, man.
No, I'm just talking.
She's got to get.
I'm just talking about the fact that there's so much porn made of her. Like, Jesus Christ, guys. Do you not see the redhead? Okay, do you not see the redhead over here?
Okay, yeah, everyone likes Colin, but I mean, come on. I'm partial to CC as well. I mean, she's She's that old soul that has just seen too much that you just want to cuddle with and just say it's all going to be okay. While Colin's the feisty one that literally doesn't need your support but secretly appreciates it.
Right, well, all this, of course, leads to the next iteration of this pitch. Investigation! Because, let's face it, the world's confused and they want to know what's going on. So, let's start off with everyone's favorite part of the continental U.S.
And which part would that be?
East
Not
Coast!
so much. Oh, okay. So we're starting off on the east, working our way west. Gotcha.
The reason I
Now,
do
where
this,
should we
folks-
start?
The reason I do this, folks, is because, let's face it, everyone who has ever done any Code Geass fic concentrates on Japan way too goddamn much. For us, or at least in this case, we want to start out with something you don't see a lot of. The European Union.
Now, I will say this before we continue. Al understands the reason why it's only concentrated in Japan. It's because the show basically takes place in Japan. That's where all the action is. Except for those that do Akito the Exile and Wyvern Zero. Those movies, those take place in the EU.
Yes.
Which, Al, if you ever do get a chance, watch them.
Already have.
Okay. So, as you say, we take place in the EU with, of course, everyone's favorite ex-Britannian noble, Lila Macomb. Along with her maybe not husband, boyfriend, friends with benefits, whichever one you want to say, Akito Hyuga.
Yes. As they are sent by the EU to investigate on a submarine. And why a submarine? Well, let's face it, anyone and everyone realizes that, hey, maybe sending a surface vessel towards a nation that we have historically been at war with more times than we can count, probably not a good idea.
It's a bad idea.
Yeah, probably not a good idea. So we're just going to send a sub. And so they send a little submarine. Submarine starts coming in until they make a sonar contact. A surface contact. They send up a periscope and realize that is an oil rig.
Huh? Oil rig?
What is it?
Wait. There's no oil rig right here in this specific part of the ocean. It's supposed to be free and clear. What's going on here? What manner of shenanigans is this?
And they would have continued more if they weren't radio contacted by a group calling themselves the Enclave. And, of course, after a little bit of back and forth, they surface, they peacefully make contact on the oil rig, which we ourselves are currently standing on, or at least, currently standing on at this very moment, or at least the one that we know and love from America Rising to the Enclave.
The tale of the Enclave.
Well, Legacy of the Enclave, but yeah, that too. And just a side note, little quick tangent. I've got to thank the guys who made America Rising 2, or at least, Legacy of the Enclave mod, and their custom asset work. Like, dear God alive, they have made such good asset work. Like, from the listening post, to the military base, to the oil rig. My God, is it amazing work, and I hope they make a 3. Because
you guys are really talented. Keep up the good work.
Legitimately, like, seriously, make a 3. Make a 3rd one. Let us be able to go into Far Harbor and nuke a world. Just saying.
And clear out those raider scum. For the good of America.
Yes, I know there was a patch for America Rising 2, but it's not the same. It's not the same. Anyway, back to the story. So, basically, our friends, the Wyverns, of course, or Wolf Squad, whichever one you go with, make contact with General... Well... I'm trying to remember his name, actually. Basically, the General, along with, of course, the officers, and the Colonel, of course, in America Rising 2, and the scientist, and they basically ask the very much so honest question of, number 1, who are you people? Number 2, where'd you come from? And number 3, why are you not
Where'd you come from? Where'd you go? Where'd you come from, Cotton Eye Joe?
God damn it, Ander.
I'm sorry. I couldn't help myself.
Basically, they kind of sit down and ask, hey, what happened? What was that big bright light? And why are you here?
And of course, the EU, they have their own questions. Who are you? Where'd Britannia go?
And that's where it starts the very, very long thing of questions and answers. And dear
Including
God,
more than a few shocked Pikachu faces when they say Washington's rebellion that failed.
yeah, let's just go
Say
ahead and plot point
what?
this. So let's go ahead and plot point this, because General Ward, who was of pre-war America, and of course those of pre-war America being General Ward, Captain Preston, and Dr. Kane, and of course Lieutenant Fitzpatrick, they'd be shocked to find out that America lost. Colonel Whitehill, as well as all the other post-war Enclave personnel, would also be a little bit shocked. And oh dear. Yeah.
I'm actually like 99% sure they wouldn't be shocked. It would actually be,
Anger.
well, we're taking his face off the $100 bill.
Mm-hmm. Of course, there would be a couple of those, obviously kind of calling out the fact of, yeah, no, that's not true. Oh, Benjamin Franklin would never do that. It was, who was it, actually, that was the turncoat during the Revolution?
Benedict Arnold.
Oh, yeah, Benedict Arnold. Yeah, no, they'd be calling out about Benedict Arnold all the time. Anyway, so basically, after they learn about the world they're in, and the fact of, oh, hey, the bombs didn't drop, and the fact of, you didn't create the atom bomb?
No, what's the atom bomb?
That's when they get their answers from them, and the fact of, oh yes, they learn about the fact of Washington's rebellion actually worked, but they call it the Revolutionary War. America was a superpower for a good long while, and Britannia was just a small little island nation who lost its empire after WW2. And basically up to the bombs dropping in 2077, which, dear God Almighty, would kind of shock them a bit. The fact of their world ended via nuclear hellfire because of communist and not because of Vault-Tec. We will be talking about the show later on. I promise. Everyone's going to ask, what about the show? What about the show? We've talked about it.
Take that.
We will talk about it later on, I promise. But this, of course, leads to, well, we've already talked about, and sadly I didn't play the card for it, but this does lead to, of course, First Contact, which technically speaking, First Contact happened with the Enclave, with the EU, which, believe me, we'll get into what happens after that. But back on the West Coast, because everyone's going to ask, what about the West Coast? What about the NCR? Because you have the NCR on the map. What's going on with them? Well, back in Japan, and Ander here can, of course, fill out a little bit more with this, Cornelia makes peace with the Black Knights, thanks to Euphemia, because the fact of, we just lost contact with the fucking mainland, and we are going to find out what the hell is going on.
It's less peace and more a tentative ceasefire.
Mm-hmm. And so, they hop on a boat, they sail on the boat, and as they get closer, they start getting more signals, and they start, and during this whole time, they've been kind of listening in on the ham radio signals, and it's been talking about...
And one of those signals they're receiving would be, of course, an NCR radio signal about being overrun by Legion forces.
Which confuses the hell out of them. What is the Legion? What about the NCR? What's this? What's that? What's New Vegas? What's the Mojave? It is confusion out the wazoo once again. But it isn't until they get to San Francisco that they come upon the West Coast in all its glory. And once again are kind of called and said, who are you, where are you from, and who do you represent? Because, seeing Huey and VTOL choppers flying overhead, kind of makes you realize, oh hey, these guys are not Britannians.
Yep. I don't recognize that. That's definitely not a VTOL. That's definitely not one of our VTOLs.
Which, of course,
And
yes, anyone...
That's definitely not one of our tanks.
Which, of course, anyone who, of course, is watching this, yes, you are more than welcome to make the joke if you write this. The fact of, hey, that looks like a dragonfly.
Which, to be honest, the vertibird does look like a dragonfly. No one can deny that.
Yeah, it kind of depends on which one we're talking about and which one we believe which then again the NCR will probably have a nice good fleet of vertibirds of many varieties and types from the Enclave War and the Brotherhood War, as well as many other pre-war military installations, but yeah. Anyway, moving on. So, of course, they would make landfall in the NCR, which makes for first contact with, of course, the New California Republic and President Kimball and his cabinet, and the rest of the NCR. And the fact of, oh yes, there's now a world outside this borders and sea, and there's no radiation, and, well...
Is that a tree?
Basically, it's that, folks. And this is where I think things get kind of fun, because, let's face it, making first contact is one thing, but... diplomacy and economics are another, because let's face it, it's going to be reported on NCR radio and NCR, basically airwaves, that they have made contact with a faction and people outside from the ocean. And, of course, learned the fact that, oh, hey, everything outside of here is not irradiated, and, the places we're in is actually not irradiated also to high hell and back. This gets the attention of one Mr. Robert House, who would send one of his own representatives to this historic meeting, of course. Which, let's face it, he would send an Assaultron as his representative.
I hate the fact you're probably right.
I mean, let's face it, Assaultrons are very rugged, they're very durable, and they are very effeminate.
That's the reason I hate you're right.
Yes. So, basically, an Assaultron shows up representing the interest of Mr. House, which also introduces, of course, the people of Code Geass to actual automatons, and probably awakens more than a few things they didn't know they had interest in.
Including more than one saying, okay, why the hell is that robot sexy?
Do not deny yourselves, people in the comment section. We know, we've seen the artwork, we've heard the voice of Cleo. We know.
Yeah, we know, you filthy degenerates.
Damn technophiles. Anyway. So, again, diplomacy. Now, as this is happening on the West Coast, which we will get back to, don't get me wrong, but you're curious as to what's going on the East Coast. Well, let's just say the members of the EU expedition has just came across their first taste of power armor and energy weapons and plasma weapons. Oh my.
Seriously?
What?
I just heard you get hard.
Oh my, Mr. Takai.
I mean, let's face it. When you have these people who literally have their own factory within their oil rig that literally can produce these things by the hundreds, you take notice and take attention. Also, you do also, of course, notice the fact of, oh yeah, there's another faction within the Commonwealth. You have the Minutemen, who basically are trying to bring law and order to the Commonwealth. Well, the Enclave is more than happy to help them out. They are basically National Guard. Then, of course, you have the Institute, which, dear God alive, that is something that I think everyone can agree when they ask, what'd you guys come up with for the Institute? We had two options. Option number one...
Either one, destroy it.
Well, actually, number one, we were going to basically have it be that shadowy organization that could basically spy upon the world and kind of just watch and wait as they always have done. Number 2 is, of course, it being destroyed. Number 3, which is the most likely option and one that anyone can agree with, because of course we've basically taken this option in America Rising 2, integrate into the Enclave, and that is what we did.
Excuse me, what?
We integrate into the Enclave. We did option 3. Now, there is a lot you can do with options 1 and, well, just 1, really. Option 1. And yes, you can. A shadowy organization that's able to replace people, definitely one that's a lot of fun, but option 3 was our go-to, and so that is what we did. Option 3. And so, yes, the Institute is now a part of the Enclave. And so the EU is beamed up Scotty into the Institute, where they see all the other advanced-ish technology.
Yep, all that advanced technology that you're just like,
Yes, and this is what the Enclave can offer them. Not just power armor and energy weapons, but also technology to help improve their own in exchange for helping them retake their country and nation and helping rebuild America. Now, any moron with even a simple inclination of intelligence would tell you that is a hell of a deal.
I'll make that deal. How about you, Udovich? You make that deal?
I'd make that deal.
I don't blame you. Damn good deal.
oh, it's a very, very good deal.
And let's face it, the EU would be stupid not to take it because, again, they have just been fighting Britannia and either losing or winning depending on how you look at the battlefields and the front lines and their victories and their losses. And having the ability to literally have energy weapons as well as literally throwing hot balls of plasma at anyone and everyone, and even actual power armor that would put their forces, their ground forces, on equal level of a nightmare frame, as well as, well, other heavy ordnance. Yeah, no, anyone and their mother would want that. They would sign up for that. They would help them out with that.
Oh, definitely.
And of course, everyone's going to ask, well, what about the logistics of it? The naval logistics of it? Well, the EU has a lot of oil tankers. Yes, the Enclave has one oil tanker, and yes, they are slowly rebuilding their tankers. But here's the thing. They only have one working oil tanker. Or at least just one tanker in general. And one cargo ship in general. Really, it's just a ship. It's just one big cargo ship. That's all I'm saying. So, EU, of course, is over here saying, you know what, we'll give you the ships. We'll give you the materials needed, and in exchange, you'll give us all that lovely, lovely technology.
You'll give us that lovely, lovely oil.
Yes. Which, let's face it, with the power of Adam in hand, they're going to definitely get a leg up against the Britannians. Speaking of which, how's the West Coast doing? Ander!
Everything is on fire!
Well, yes, that's the Britannian economy in a nutshell, but I'm talking about the West Coast. How are the talks of diplomacy and economics handling them?
Well, unfortunately, Princess Cornelia is not much of a diplomacy. Ha-cha-cha-cha. All she really knows is the bullheadedness of a soldier. And unfortunately, she's trying to get the NCR to give up all their territory on the West Coast. Not looking good for her right now.
Which, of course, President Kimball, with a calm manner, I know everyone and their mother is laughing in the comments section, hear me out, takes Cornelia to, of course, the military base, where he shows off the technology they have. Outside of just basic ballistics, they also have more than a few other lovely toys. Yes, they have M3 Shermans and Pattons and, you know, basic stuff of World War II and Vietnam, but it's the energy weapons and power armor that basically changes the dynamics of power, of who really has the power at the negotiation tables. Especially when he shows off, when one of his forces shows off, of course, that lovely, lovely thing that we all know and love, and we've used more times than we can count in either Fallout 3, New Vegas, and 4, and 76, the Fat Man.
I was going to say the Gatling laser, but yeah, the Fat Man works too.
Oh, don't get me wrong, the Gatling laser is a very lovely piece of deadly technology. But when faced with an actual device that you can shoulder mount by any means, be it regular or power armored unit, and launches a literal football of death.
Not just a football of death, the ultimate football of death.
Yes, especially its many variants, including but not limited to low yield, timed, high yield, and tiny tots.
The Merv!
Oh yes, the Merv also. And so Cornelia, finally realizing, I don't have the negotiation power, Euphemia takes over and tries to be the diplomat that we all know she is. As such, talking with the NCR in a more polite manner. And more or less... Go ahead, Ander.
And of course, Kim was just like, now you see, you, Princess Euphemia, I could get along with. It's just unfortunate that you're so naive about the way the world works. Don't get me wrong, that's nice. It's charming. You got that going for you, but you would not survive in politics, dear girl.
And
It
so
would chew you up and spit you out.
So a lovely non-aggression pact is signed. And while yes, Cornelia could see any means necessary to actually try and attack the NCR and even try and take them down, she knows the fact of it would cost her majorly. And the fact that the NCR is willing to use essentially portable weapons of mass destruction makes it very much so impossible to even consider an actual conventional war. Schneisel, of course, when finding out about the NCR and their capabilities, would become the main diplomat between them and what's left of Britannia. Speaking of Britannia, diplomatically speaking, all conflicts and conquests are put on fucking hold until they themselves...
Indefinitely.
Oh yes, until they themselves can basically fix their own shit, including their economic situation, because you gotta understand something. Economically speaking, Britannia's only basic economy revolved around Pendragon. Yes, you can argue the fact of, well, what about the local economies? What about the global economy? When it comes to Britannia, it is Pendragon, 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 and Sacreduct.
Pendragon.
Yes, and Pendragon. With Pendragon gone and essentially their communications and literally stock market frozen on freefall, dead in the water, their currency holds little value.
Well, you might be asking, it is so invaluable, it might as well be stacks of fun bricks to play with. AKA Germany during the Depression.
I was actually going to say something about the Franks, but no, that's about right. So, essentially, of course, that's when we get to the economic situation of it all. How could the NCR win economically? Well, that's where Mr. House comes into play. Because while, yes, don't get me wrong, the Brahmin Barons are probably going to make a lot of money with the fact of they now have unirradiated animals to work with. Mr. House...
Not to mention fresh, clean water.
Oh, yes, fresh, clean water. Mr. House is the man with the plan. I mean, we saw it in New Vegas with the fact of he literally had plans of literally getting people to space and colonizing other worlds with his rocket ships. I could play the clip, but I'd rather not, where this video is already long enough at goddamn almost 40 minutes in. So, ladies and gentlemen, here's where Mr. House comes into play. He would restart Robco. He would introduce Robco products into the market, the global market. He would make deals with the European Union, with the Chinese, with everyone who is not a part of Britannia's sphere of influence, because even he can see a sinking ship when he sees one. And that's not talking about the Pip-Boy, because don't get me wrong, I know everyone's going to bring up in the comments section, oh, he's going to release the Pip-Boy out on the market, it's going to be so popular. Don't get me wrong, the Pip-Boy is good. It just depends on what model we're talking about, be it from the frickin' Fallout 3 version, the New Vegas version, or even the 4 version, or even the 76 version, or even the TV show version. The Pip-Boy is remarkable in its own right, but it's not the end-all be-all of Robco tech.
Depends on who you ask. I don't know. I think a personal computer that can digitize anything and let you carry up to 300 pounds, I think that's pretty dang useful.
Again, don't get me wrong, it is. But the one thing that he basically releases onto the market that literally helps jumpstart the economy is, of course, the Mr. Handy line again. Because, of course...
I'm not really surprised, of course. Who doesn't want their own robot helper?
Mm-hmm. Now, everyone's going to ask, okay, what about Japan? Well, that is a part of the diplomacy, of course, because once the JLF, what's left of them, finds out about what happened and what happened to Britannia, and the fact of Britannian forces are now literally in a freeze, literally frozen. Hell, even the EU finding out about the NCR, and the other, which is basically literally the West Coast faction of the US, as they are now colloquially calling it, even the Enclave would be curious, but not in the sense of, oh, we're going to kill them. No, just curious. Just curious.
Because when they realize, wait a second, technically, we've been irradiated. We've been exposed to radiation. All these humans around us, they're pure human.
Well, I meant more or less them finding out about the NCR, but yeah, you know, it is what it is. Anyway, that'd be getting into lore stuff that we don't want to get into. We want to stick strictly to this story, and we're going to stick strictly to this story. So, here we go. Now the fact of the NCR and the Enclave are seen as the quote-unquote two governmental factions that the world will communicate with, of course everyone's going to be sending envoys. You got the Chinese, you got, which of course are turned away by the Enclave at first until the EU explains to them, no, they're not communist. They're feudalist. Oh, well, hello, welcome to the United States, or at least the current rebuilding of the Massachusetts, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, to Boston. And then, of course, you have...
I don't know about that. Those eunuchs are kind of communist to me.
And then, of course, you have the West Coast, which would definitely be interesting with the Xi, especially, you know, the fact of they would see the Japanese and, of course, the Chinese and the Koreans and all the Asians as Xi, which would be kind of hilarious for Colin, because she'd just be like, Xi? What's a Xi? You are Xi. No, I am me. No, you are Xi. No, I am me. And
no,
again...
I am me. I am me. No, you Xi. No, I am me.
And again, anyone who, of course, has the comical bone inclined may make a whole scene of misunderstanding of the fact of he's not saying she as an S-H-E, he means S-H-I. So, moving on. This is, ladies and gentlemen, we didn't have a little bit more fun at the fact of, again, politics be happening. And the EU is, of course, selling ships left, right, and center for technology. The Chinese are trying to get technology, but the Enclave is basically saying, fuck you. Well, the NCR are over here being like, well, we'll give you something, but it's not nothing. Better than anything, really. While Mr. House is looking at them like a fat man does an all-you-can-eat buffet. He sees a land of untapped potential and just economic growth, as well as something to line his own goddamn pockets.
Hey, what's wrong with making a few bucks along the way?
Unrestricted capitalism.
God bless it.
Yep. And so, 6 or so months during all this, they start learning a little bit more. They start understanding these people. They even help out with rebuilding Boston, kind of killing the irradiated creatures of hell, while Britannia is trying to lick its wounds and literally refocus in Brazil. Which, I mean, nothing bad happens in Brazil.
Of course nothing ever bad happens in Brazil. It's not like there's our favorite, everyone loves to hate National Socialists in Brazil.
Yeah. Speaking of which, you're probably wondering what's going on in the mainland. The parts of Britannia that are not currently being occupied by all of our favorite Fallout factions. Well, they're currently getting... conquered! Okay, so I say conquered.
Yep.
Let's talk about the fact of what I mean by that. Currently, at the moment, in Arizona, Caesar is, of course, now knowing that he is currently deadlocked with the NCR and the fact of, thanks to his spies, his Frumentari, they're not able to kind of do anything against them thanks to their new economic partners and kind of a lot. So he turns his gaze eastward and realizes that a lot of lands have technically been left open to him to be conquered for conquest. So he sends his forces out east, and yes, this does bring about a lovely bit of imagery of Britannian people literally being killed and slaughtered and raped and pillaged and looted and all this other stuff, and, you know, the Legion's usual MO. While out east itself proper, the East Coast is currently expanding, or at least the Enclave is expanding out of Boston and Massachusetts, while, of course, the DC Brotherhood... Well, Ander, what do you think the DC Brotherhood is currently doing?
They are probably currently reeling from the fact that Prydwen got destroyed.
Ah, yes, that's right. The Prydwen's destroyed and they're trying to rebuild.
And Arthur Maxis is dead. They lost a whole bunch of veteran soldiers, a lot of power armor. Maybe Liberty Prime, I don't know. Who knows?
Well, I mean, the TV show did kind of indicate that Arthur Maxon survived. But, again, this is our story.
I said, we're not doing the TV show.
Well, some elements from it.
Yeah.
But, either way,
like everyone's favorite ghoul.
Yes, Cooper Howard is in this, and let's be honest, the moment they start, and this is going back to the economic stuff a little bit, they do kind of give out some of their stuff from the pre-war world, comic books, shows, movies, things like that, and the Cooper Howard films get very popular among the EU, and when Cooper Howard the Ghoul hears about this, well, what the hell, he's been a bounty hunter long enough, might as well go back into the limelight. Maybe they can help him find his family, or at least let him get resources to help him find his family.
Who knows? Maybe he'll find his family a whole lot more sooner than he thought.
Exactly. But, of course, we can touch on that a little later, because that's a little jumping ahead of ourselves. So, yeah, the East Coast, of course, is currently expanding westward, because, you know, now, they don't do the whole thing.
Also, before we continue, yes, we recognize the irony it is that Britannians are getting slaughtered, enslaved, and everything bad happening to them that they've done to numbers. I fully recognize the irony in the situation.
In quoting Robin Williams,
at that point, even God's going, do you get it?
Are you getting it now, Britannia? Are you getting it? I don't think they got it.
Now, of course, unlike Caesar's Legion that is currently doing its pillaging and the hoodoo, the voodoo they do, the East Coast is a lot more calm, I guess you could say. A lot more civilized.
I mean, they still got to contend with various raider factions the Brotherhood didn't put down.
Yes, indeed. Although the gunners, including the operators of Nuka World, well, they're currently experiencing a lovely boost in economic gain and growth and the fact of people be paying money for protection. And let's face it, the EU would pay handsomely for experienced soldiers of the wasteland. No.
Oh.
Go ahead, Andy.
Without a doubt. I was going to say, without a doubt.
Oh, most definitely. So yes, the gunners and operators are very much so getting a very nice economic boost in their coin pocket and coin purse. And Nuka World, speaking of Nuka World, Nuka-Cola is currently the best, most popular soft drink being sold around the fucking world, even into Britannia through, well, underhanded means of smuggling, but, you know, it is what it is. And of course, you know, Nuka World being rebuilt and being cleaned up, and the gator claws actually being an attraction. I don't know why, but apparently there's something about a bipedal alligator that apparently is attractive to some people.
And not that way, you pervs.
You filthy degenerates. No, it's the fact of they're walking alligators. So yeah, Nuka World is now back in full swing, and everyone enjoying a lovely taste of Nuka-Cola. And of course, Sunset
It
Sarsaparilla
would
is
be
now
the
back in.
cheeriest word of Nuka-Cola.
And of course, everyone's enjoying a nice glass of Sunset Sarsaparilla from the NCR's own Sunset Sarsaparilla Corporation. And Vim is Vim. It's Moxie, basically. For anyone who's ever drank Moxie, I personally don't like it. If you like Moxie, that's you. That's you. I don't like Moxie myself. Anyway, with that said, of course, then we continue onward to, of all things, the Midwest. The Midwest Brotherhood is here, and they're slowly expanding. However, ladies and gentlemen, you're probably wondering what happens to the Britannian citizens of the Midwest encountering and the East Coast encountering. Well, with the East Coast encounter, they're basically just being told, hey, you got an option. You can either be citizens of the new United States, or you can leave.
Now, for most of the people on the East Coast, they're like, wait, what does that mean? Oh, it means you get free water, it means you get free electricity, we'll build you a better house, and we'll protect you from raiders. Where do I sign?
On the Midwest Brotherhood, of course, it's basically anyone of military age is to be conscripted into the Brotherhood and help out with, of course, their protection and the usual spiel from the Brotherhood of Fallout tactics from the Midwest. Which, just as a side note, side tangent, once again, the Midwest Brotherhood power armor is fucking amazing. I don't care who you are. That is amazing looking power armor.
Mm-hmm. It is an alright looking suit.
Now, of course, you're probably wondering, when things finally calm down, and of course, Britannia is currently fighting Caesar's Legion as well as their citizens, being told, hey, you can either drop your Britannia, you can either be Americans or stay Britannians and leave, that sort of thing. Well, that's where we finally get into the rest of the world, or at least those under Britannian control. Japan, yes, we're finally talking about Japan and their... Yeah, I know, spy games, I get it, it's lazy, but let's face it, that's exactly what's going on. Britannia technically signed a non-aggression pact with both the Enclave and the NCR. While yes, the Enclave still has a fucking hate boner for them, they're literally gaining back the United States much easier than before, especially with Enclave High Command and the literal president of these United States in the Cheyenne Mountain Complex. Which...
Now, many of you are wondering, what president are you talking about? There is no president of the Enclave anymore, except there is.
Mm-hmm.
Out in the west, in Nevada, near the biggest little city in the entire world of New Reno, sits the Sierra Enclave and the president, Douglas Granite.
Who at that point
That's right. That's right. We're adding the Enclave Reborn Redux mod from Old World Blues, including President Douglas Granite.
Which, let's face it, his ass would immediately be exfilled to the East Coast pretty damn quick. Under, of course, clandestine means. This is spy games, after all. This ain't smash and grab and get the hell out games.
Aw, but that's the most fun type of games, is what a lot of Enclave members will say.
No, yeah, sure, that works so well for Bay of Pigs.
Fine, it's fine.
So, yeah. The big thing, though, ladies and gentlemen, is that, aside, of course, from the non-aggression pact being signed and the fact of, hey, there are now 2 presidents to the U.S., and basically the EU and a good portion of the world that's not under Britannian control wanting to make sure that these 2 factions don't kill each other and basically ruin the world, and them loving the fact, and of course the East Coast and West Coast loving the fact of there are now unirradiated lands, clean water, and we're in a world where literally no communism.
Everything can kill you.
Exactly, no communism, and the things that can kill you are being rounded up and either culled and put onto animal reserves by request, of course, of their economic partners, or put into zoos by request of their economic partners.
Looking at you, Deathclaws. Looking at you.
Hey, Deathclaw.
Now,
Go ahead.
Yeah. And I hear what many of you are asking yourself. Well, what about super mutants? Well, they're still going to be a problem? Well, yes, to a degree. For one, the Institute is stopping their experiments with FEV and more than likely will dispose of the FEV in a safe manner. Rocket to the sun, anyone? As for the Vault 87 mutants, I am pretty sure that that Lions and then later Maxon's Brotherhood wiped out those mutants.
They did.
And the rest of the mutants that are left are literally leftovers from the Master's army and are literally, unless you encounter them on a bad day, literally they won't hurt anyone.
Not only that, but cut content from Fallout New Vegas actually had super mutant rangers in the NCR military, as well as mutants in the NCR military. So,
because why not? After all, super mutants live forever, essentially.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, essentially, super mutants who are deemed sentient and not dum-dums, or violent types, are basically okay. And granted, you can tell the difference between them and the dum-dums by their, well, I know this is going to sound racist, but it's true, skin color.
And what he means by that is that some of the West Coast super mutants, they're green. That's how you can tell.
A dark
the East Coast,
green.
A dark green. The East Coast, they're yellow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why they decided to make them yellow, who knows? Maybe it had to do with the lack of sunlight. I
Maybe it was
have
something
no
in the water.
idea. Maybe it was.
Now, of course, that's not to say the EU wouldn't have its own issues, at least, or, trying to make sure their interests are protected, especially with the fact of, well, Atlantic City is helping out a lot, especially with, drumming up tourism and supporting Appalachia, but also the pit being literally the center point of many economic and, of course, industrial complexes, the largest in the wasteland.
And it is, and it's still having a lot of foundries that are still up and running, even 200 years later.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, you're probably looking at us wondering, what do we mean by spy games earlier? We haven't really talked about spy games outside of the fact of, oh yeah, the EU is trying to keep, the NCR and Enclave from killing each other and, kind of keeping them at bay so that way, they can milk as much as they can out of them while also kind of having that nice little buddy-buddy relationship with them while at the same time not realizing the Enclave and the NCR has their own agenda. Not to mention, of course, Caesar's Legion doing its thing with its Frumentari, and of course, the Midwest Brotherhood also doing its thing with its own spies. Everybody be spying on everybody, except for Japan. Japan, going back to it with the JLF, well, Andrew, I'm going to let you take over this part. How would Japan do in this new world now, after 6 months?
Well, obviously Zero is still playing to free Japan. He's having to placate his Black Knights, a little bit, saying we can't really do anything until we know for certain that Britannia on the mainland is really gone. And of course, he came back and said, yep, Britannia's gone, so, it's just Cornelia and her forces here. But we may have to keep them here. And cue the whole, well, why, Zero, why can't we just kick them out? Because automatically we'd be looked at like a piece of very good fish to our neighbors to the east. Our neighbors to the west.
Mm-hmm.
Looking right in the direction of China.
Yes, China.
Now, of course, some would automatically understand exactly what he means, but a couple would be like, well, what do you mean? Aren't they just gonna, let us be free? That's when Zero, even though they can't see him give him the look, he gives them the look. And he says, in the most simple terms, despite the fact Britannia is gone, we still sit on one of the world's largest deposits of Socradite in the world. Do you honestly think China, the Chinese Federation, will let us be free to sell it to them? Or will they try to invade, install a puppet government, and get the Socradite for free? Which one is more likely to happen? The second one, exactly. That's why we need to keep them here, at least for a little bit.
Now, of course, everyone will be thinking, okay, that's the Black Knights. What about what's left of the JLF, of, the princess, and all the other stuff that we saw in the show? Well, that's the thing. The Spy Games is one of misdirection, of subterfuge, of everything. And literally, the Enclave would be looking at Japan and realizing that they have a chance to do what they couldn't do in their last world, which was literally make sure Japan doesn't fall to communism, or at least, in this case, lose a nation and an ally. Because, technically speaking, the treaty is still in effect, technically. Which, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, the American-Japan treaty that basically says, hey, if you get attacked, we come help you, that sort of thing. So, in this case, the Enclave is going to basically work with who they see as the legitimate government to kind of help them, do their thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which, in this case, is literally help undermine the Britannian provisional government and help overthrow it via their CIA tactics. While in this case, with the NCR, with the NCR military intelligence, of course, and their own little intelligence type deal, well, let's face it, it is what it is to them, especially, I'm trying to get the words kind of right on this one, because I don't want to sound like a jackass. They would be taking leads and cues from the pre-war world like they always have in their own governmental past. Yeah, especially when it comes to counterintelligence, but granted, this is Britannia, of course, and, that's not exactly that hard to kind of get one over on.
Yeah, exactly.
So, in my mind, I could see the NCR actually kind of contacting the Black Knights, because that's kind of their only point of contact. And they'd be contacting them and be like, hey, we can help you out a little bit in exchange for giving us concessions after you help liberate your country. Now, of course, everyone who has known that sort of phrase, that coin of phrase, will automatically assume, oh, they want part of our nation. No. This is Mr. House speaking through them now. He wants economic guarantees that he won't be taxed heavily. And, kind of help with the economy.
Exactly. That's all he wants. He just wants a fair shake of the deal.
Mm-hmm. And so that's Japan at the moment. That's not talking about the rest of the world, especially the EU right now that is currently literally being like, hey, we can liberate some of our lands, get them back, and kick Britannia to the curb now with our new shiny technology.
Yep.
So yeah, as a new spring offensive, of course, which I say that, we don't know what date this actually begins at, but now that a new offensive has begun against the Britannians via, of course, the now Fallout technologically advanced EU forces, Britannia's on the back foot.
Majorly on the back foot.
Even Schneisel, who was in, of course, California at the time, is a little shocked. And even tries to accuse the NCR and even the Enclave of attempting to aid Britannia's enemies, only to be reminded, no, we didn't aid anyone. We sold them technology.
Well, what's the difference? Well, for one, that's not going to come back to bite us in the butt anytime soon.
And two, it's just plain economics. Who do you blame who buys the gun? The dude who bought the gun or the guy who made the gun?
Well, for some people, it's both.
Yeah, and for Britannia, who has an ego as massive as it is, and of course restraining themselves from doing anything against the NCR Enclave, because let's face it, this is just the EU with Enclave, with their tech kicking their ass. For people who actually train with the stuff and actually understands the stuff, no, they would be absolutely myrtleized and probably completely collapse. Which, by the way, for those who are wondering and wanting to keep track of the map at home, currently speaking, basically Caesar's Legion has been, of course, kicked back across the dam in the now second Battle of Hoover Dam. And at the moment, the Enclave has currently got everything up to about the mighty Mississippi, while Caesar's Legion is close to the mighty Mississippi. So, yeah, that's currently what's going on. As for down south, well, Britannia, once again, has been told to basically leave, and they are currently trying to run away as far as Texas. Or at least the Mexican border of Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Because, Caesar's Legion and the NCR are currently fighting every which way down south as well as up north, while also fighting the Brotherhood in the Midwest up north as well, or at least the midsection, northern midsection of the U.S., while also fighting the Enclave now over here, as well as Britannia over here, close to Florida, or at least around the Florida area. Again, the U.S. is currently a bit of a clusterfuck of lines and borders and who really controls what.
It's essentially a really bad Hoi 4 match.
And this is coming from a Hoi 4 player. Now, of course, the two presidents of the New California Republic and, of course, the United States do come to an agreement, thanks to the mitigation of the European Union, that, technically speaking, the U.S. will be split, or at least divided equally among them, with the East being, of course, the Eastern United States, or at least the Commonwealth of the U.S.,
and the West being the Western United States, or the New Californian Republic.
Basically. And while begrudgingly both agree to it, because, they're not going to turn down a good thing, they don't really want to use weapons of mass destruction against each other, except against, Caesar's Legion, and now the Brotherhood, who may or may not ally with the NCR, or the... Well, no, they're not going to ally with the Enclave. They fucking hate the Enclave. They probably ally with the NCR before they ally with the Enclave.
Yeah. Now, for those of you wondering what exactly the border between the East and West would be, simple. Go to Louisiana, go to the very bottom of it, and then follow it up. So the states of Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, Minnesota, those are going to be the states, the state lines of those states. They're going to be the borderline between East and West. I know many were thinking, oh, it's going to be the Mississippi. No, that would lean too heavily in New California's favor. I mean, technically it already does, considering Texas had all the oil fields.
Yeah.
But the Enclave actually has a leg up, considering New York and Norfolk in this world are undamaged. So they got the Brooklyn Naval Yard and the Norfolk Naval Yard, all along with the Philadelphia Naval Yard.
Mm-hmm.
So technically they got a leg up, while the West Coast is still, kind of destroyed.
Mm-hmm. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's being rebuilt. And it is getting, a nice little facelift. But it's still kind of fucked.
Oh, like you wouldn't believe.
Now, of course, with the discussions about the vaults, of course, being brought into play, as well as Robco, of course, making their own versions of the fallout shelters, in the sense of natural disasters, flooding, well, come to the shelters right here. No social experiments, of course, conducted.
What do you think we are, Vault-Tec?
Oh, boy. Now, of course, the spy game still continues, with, again, now the Enclave-backed JLF, and now the NCR-backed Black Knights, doing their own thing and their own reasoning for liberating Japan. Now, does this lead to a Japanese civil war? Well...
maybe. Who knows?
I want to say no, but when two ideologies of how they should lead their country kind of clash... well... While the NCR and the Enclave can't technically fight each other directly, who's to say there isn't a fucking proxy war?
Exactly.
Now, that's not to say the Enclave isn't doing their own sort of shenanigans in the Orient. For China... Well, Ander, why don't you take over this one, my friend?
Deep in the dark underground, plots are being plotted. Now, what kind of plots, you may be asking? Oh, just the regular ones. The eunuchs are attempting to sell their empress into little whatever they want. Either sell her to the remnants of Britannia for noble titles. Who knows? Maybe they won't do it this time, considering 80% of all of the nobles are gone, including a majority of the royal family.
Now
Who knows? Maybe they're going... Oh,
Go ahead, Ander.
Or maybe, who knows? Maybe they'll try and offer a political marriage to New California. Or even the Enclave. Which I doubt Douglas Granite would even entertain that idea.
Don't get me wrong, the Wasteland is a very messed up place, but even they draw a line at certain things, unless of course you're a dirty raider, but again, civilized society does draw a line at certain things.
Or the Legion.
Oh yes, or the Legion.
Or the Legion.
Oh yes, or the Legion.
So who knows really what the eunuchs are doing, but as I said before, the Chinese Empress's loyal general, Xing Qi, he wants to free his empress. So, more than likely, he is plotting behind the eunuchs to get his queen, his empress, free. Now, who will he turn to? Who really knows? Will it be the NCR? Will it be the Enclave? Will it be the Black Knights? Who knows? No one knows right yet. Not even I know.
That's where we come into play with this plan that we came up with. Because while yes, the Institute during this whole time has basically been helping create advanced technology and of course, helping out with their own stuff and basically making a mark in the world, including Mr. House, being the alumni he is, kind of, all that good jazz, and the MIT, basically, or the CIT, my bad, the Commonwealth Institute of Technology, excuse me, basically being rebuilt and now being a college again for the up-and-coming bright minds that are. Well, they decide to restart the synth program, except in this case being used by the literal Department of Intelligence, or at least, the Fallout version of the CIA, to help replace a certain general in China, to basically give them an excuse for armed intervention. The Fallout equivalent of the CIA basically contacts the Institute and tells them to restart the synth program. Now, synths are a bit of a touchy subject in the New World, because technically speaking, they're walking, talking, sentient beings that may or may not have the ability to have and or bear children.
Decided on that yet. Who knows?
Yeah, it's one of those weird little gray areas that we're not going to get into. What we will get into, however, is why they've contacted the Institute to make synth again, or in this case, one synth, who literally is modeled after a Chinese general, for whom of which we have not named yet, nor have we figured out whose name we're going to use, and literally starts spreading communism, or at least gives basically the excuse for armed intervention into China.
We're going to do a peasant uprising, aren't we?
Well, I mean, technically speaking, it's really anyone's game. Let's face it, China is a very touchy subject in Code Geass. Be it, of course, with the eunuchs and their corruption, and the very much so immoral and illegal wedding of a 15-year-old girl to a older man in his fucking 40s.
Yep. Not to mention the fact that they are knowingly pushing a drug that literally causes mental degradation.
Mm-hmm.
And what drug is that, for those who don't know? It's called Refrain. Basically, it lets you see only happy memories. Now I know what you're thinking. Well, what's wrong with that? It's the fact you have to continually open the dose because your body becomes naturally immune to it, or resistant to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe barely a hit will get you seeing all the happy things you remember. Next thing you know, it's a little bit more. More and more, until literally you're taking an entire vial.
Mm-hmm. And you're probably thinking,
ironically enough, this is the one thing that Britannia's like, oh, no. We don't care what you do, but no, not this. Any former citizen of a country found with refrain is given an automatic 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Dealers, I think, are given death sentences.
I believe so, yes. But, ladies and gentlemen, of course, that's where, again, anyone and everyone could basically use this as an excuse to basically kind of create their own element of why would someone want to basically make an armed intervention into China.
Communism, that's why.
Yes, communism being one of them, a civil war being another. Mr. House basically saying that his economic interests are a threat, or at threat. And basically, the Enclave is over here being like, you got it! And just fucking sends over their military forces.
Mm-hmm.
Again, either and or is a good option, and reason why China is now, more or less, having an armed intervention by either the NCR or the Enclave.
And my money's on the Enclave being the ones that intervene under the pretense of making sure the filth of communism doesn't spread.
Even though they were the ones who kind of inserted it via the CIA, but you know what? Or at least the Fallout version of the CIA, but you know what? Semantics.
It'd still be the CIA.
It's semantics. So, with that said, you're probably wondering, hey, whatever happened to that landmass? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we talk about the Royals.
Good old Emperor Chucky. Or Chuck, whichever one you want to call him, but I like to call him Emperor Chuck or Chucky.
Yes, and the Royals at the end, or at World's End, depending on how you want to go it. I like the Royals at the end of the world, but you know what, it's whatever. We went with Royals at World End. So, with that said, of course, how is Britannia handling being in a post-apocalyptic world?
Not well. Not well, Al. It kind of looks like they're running around like chickens with their heads cut off. Charles doesn't know what to do. The Knights of the Round are essentially useless, and they're getting sporadic reports of them being attacked by what seems to be giant mutated creatures.
Yeah, and the fact of he's completely cut off from the world as he knows it, or at least the Geass, he's cut off from that. Well...
Oh, no. He still has his Geass. It's just that he can't complete the Ragnarok dream now.
Oh, yes, the Ragnarok dream, which, don't get us wrong, we'll get to it. We will get to it. But, ladies and gentlemen, you're probably wondering, okay, are they at least trying to survive in this new world? Don't get me wrong, they will somewhat survive, but that is not our prerogative, story-wise. We're just saying that, yeah, no, they're having a pretty hard time in a post-nuclear America, or at least in this case, a post-nuclear world, and they're trying to kind of handle it and survive it, and just basically that sort of thing. Now, with Charles Xavier, oh wait, wrong thing, Charles Britannia dealing with a post-nuclear world, how is his little brother, or big brother, basically VV, handling it with... The end of Ragnarok's dream is basically Anders' little baby of what he believes VV's is kind of doing. So we're going to back up a little bit, or at least let Ander kind of go through the plot points of the beginning of the Pulse.
Alright, so the Pulse starts, like we already said, at during the battle at Narita. So, it goes from there. Cornelia gets routed again, and anywhere from 50 to the cannon, 80% of her forces are destroyed. She retreats back to the Viceroy's palaces with her tail between her legs after being handed her first ever defeat.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, she receives word that they can't get in contact with the homeland. No one's answering satellite phones. The landline seems to be disconnected somehow, which should be impossible. And of course, it takes maybe it takes about maybe a couple of days before they realize, let's try a ham radio. Let's see if we can get a ham radio enthusiast. And that's, of course, when they hear, Mr. New Vegas, Three Dog, Radio Freedom, the various incident reports from any NCR soldiers, or even just listening to Three Dogs radio broadcasts about not feeding the Yaogwai.
Or even Diamond City Radio, or...
with Travis Lonely Mile.
Or even the other various radio stations, including, well, we've already talked about Galaxy News
Radio.
Now, how is VV doing, Ander? You believe?
Well, that little crotch goblin is losing his mind. Let's see, he can't find Charles. His only reason for literally doing all this is gone. He doesn't know whether or not he wants to continue it or not. Let's see, he has now lost help of literally the empire that controlled a third of the world, so he doesn't even know if he can actually continue with the plan. Second, all he has is a few hundred children with literally no support anymore because the Geass directorate was an off the books black site project, so no more official funding coming in. So Vivi, in a word, is screwed and tattooed for a literal 70-year-old stuck in a 10-year-old's body, and he can't even later get drunk.
Now, I know everyone's going to be thinking, okay, are you just going to write Vivi out of the story? No, of course not. Are you out of your mind? Are you going to write Code Geass out of your story? Oh, no, of course not. Are you out of your mind? Are you going to do anything with Code Geass at all? With the Geass powers? Of course! Of course we're doing something with Code Geass. Are you out of your mind? Ander, what the hell are we doing with Geass?
Let's see. Well, I'm pretty sure they'd be interested to know about Cece, considering she literally met George Washington.
That is
offered
true.
him a Geass, and he turned it down.
That is true. Now, of course, Code Geass, as many of you know, is a power of basically manipulating mind and good jazz.
It's not just that.
Yeah,
Geass, at its fundamentalness, is a wish. And that wish is how you wish to define your life. For Lelouch, it's absolute control over his life. It varies. Lelouch put it best. Geass is a wish. It's what you want the most. Now, no, I can't remember exactly what Cece's Geass was. And of course, we all know that Emperor Charles's Geass is the ability to rewrite memories, which has helped him probably quite a lot. And we all know that Lelouch's mother's Geass is she can body snatch people. So yeah, when I say Charles's Geass came in handy, that's probably why, because more than likely Charles and Mariana's current host Anya more than likely have been caught in a few compromising situations. So, sorry, you can't remember that. You did not see a thing.
Oh yes, very much so. Now, here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. They make a Lelouch, of course, the first one being to make the startling discovery, finds out that Geass does not work with people from the wasteland.
Why, are you probably wondering? Simple. Radiation, and probably the fact that the Dark Gods probably don't want anyone but themselves to mess with the people's minds.
Yeah, speaking of the Dark Gods, we're not getting into that. If you're wondering, hey, how is the crazy bastards of Dunwich and all that doing, we're not getting into that.
Oh, no, we're not getting into that, at least not yet. Because let's be honest, the Enclave's probably going to find the Dunwich building.
Not only that, but they're also probably being very much so interested in CC, and as well as the NCR being very interested in CC, as well as OSI being very interested in CC, as well as a variety of frickin' cults being interested in CC. Speaking of which, we now are at that point where we've basically talked about a lot of plot points, and let's be honest here, folks. We talked about the fact of Howard Cooper, the media, and all being popular outside the world. And you know what? We're going to talk about that. The music of the Fallout universe becomes very popular around the world, especially in Japan, where, that whole thing's going down. But the big one, of course, is Howard Cooper and his filmography being very popular, especially the Old West type stuff being very popular because, well, let's face it, I don't think Britannia had a Wild West expansionist thing, did they?
Or at least not in our world, because wherever Britannia went, literally law and order went.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't have a Wild West period like we did, more than likely. So yeah, Cooper Howard's films about the Wild West, and not only that, but John Wayne, if he was around, his classic films would probably do well too.
Oh, yes. Not to mention, of course, again, all the old style of, just advertisement, really, and the fact of, Nuka World here, and of course, Caleb Bradburton being alive, but being a head in jar, they'd probably come with their technology to kind of help him, and he did do that whole thing, make sure he is able to kind of, which, speaking of which, I'm just going to go ahead and bring up a little tangent here. Why the hell did he not just do the whole thing of putting him on a robot body?
Because he probably didn't think that far ahead, and in all honesty, what they could probably do is just copy his memories and just do like they did to Nick Valentine. Except it's an actual synth body.
That is true, and let's face it, the Enclave would want a pre-war industrialist and genius such as Caleb Bradburton in a synth body.
I mean, yeah, they did. He did work with the U.S. government with Project Cobalt, so.
Yeah.
And if they did do that way with the synth, it's gonna be kind of ironic if the only synth body they have is a female.
We're not going down that route. What I will say, though, ladies and gentlemen, is that essentially the cultural revolution has begun in Code Geass. And much like Pizza Hut, everyone is loving it.
That is not your slogan. Wait for it, bitch.
Don't you mean no one out pizzas the Hut, Al?
Oh, yeah, that's right. But essentially, Nuka-Cola is now on the rise. The other flavors are on the rise, including the controversial Quantum.
I can imagine Tamaki just going, so wait, you mean this stuff's radioactive? Yeah, but it doesn't hurt you. No, it just turns your pee blue. Yeah. Why would anyone drink this? Even if the isotope is harmless, why would anyone drink this? It's got a great taste. I'll be the judge of that. Look. Dang it, I hate the fact you're right. It does have a great taste.
For anyone who has actually drank the G Fuel Quantum or even the Jones Soda Quantum or really any Quantum drink or recipe, for a fucking fact, it's actually really damn good. Like, goddamn is it good. But, ladies and gentlemen, the comics, of course, also kick off a nice little entertainment renaissance with Grognok, the barbarian, becoming very popular, the mysterious Silver Shroud, and all the other.
And the mistress of mystery, his femme fatale.
You get what I'm saying, folks. Basically, the entertainment industry booms, and Cooper Howard, while yes, a ghoul, which, let's be honest, there will be an adverse reaction to it at first. Once people start learning about him and they start talking with him and he starts actually conversing with them and he starts using the technology they have to kind of help heal up a few things here and there, even, kind of synthesize something to kind of help him taste again, he'll be on top again on the entertainment industry. Hell, he'd even help the entertainment industry of the EU, even go back to California at one point in his life, when he's ready. But he's
all to ask a couple of men a couple of questions. Where's my family?
Mm-hmm. And even kind of sharing some anecdotal stories about his time on the front lines with the Marines at Operation Anchorage. And let's be honest, that's definitely going to be a lot of interest right there, especially with the fact of, hey, you know, Canada and their world was annexed. And you know, we've gone on long enough, I think. I think the folks have gotten the point of the plot points and what we're trying to go with. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like this idea and would love to see us do this after Medea...
Please, let us know.
Instead, of course, of Gate Storyteller, or if you want us to do this alongside Gate Storyteller, which why would you, then please let us know in the comments section down below. Or, if you want us to attempt this early and make this into a thing, check out the PayPal and Cash App down below, or check out, of course, the links to many of our partners down below as well for, of course, All American Airsoft Media. For it's people like you that actually make the content we do here possible, as well as the fact of I'm able to do what I do thanks to many of our friends, including the BB Assassins and many others. And if you want Ander to do another pitch video without me in it, let us know in the comment section down below as well. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, I'm an Airsoft Owl.
And I've been AnderFell.
If you want us to do another pitch idea with Fallout, let us know down below what you think works. We'll look for them, we'll cherry pick them, and we'll try and probably do something with it. I mean, we'll try, right?
Yeah, we'll definitely try. But until then, this is, of course, AnderFell and Airsoft Owl signing off. And just remember, somebody loves you, and that somebody is us. Take it away.
And we shall see you in the next video. Till next time. Later.